Be sure to check out my store for the stuff I use and templates at a low cost, and get my everything pack so you can have everything in my store at a reduced cost, less than $20 if you tweet it out.
What's up guys, Qehzy here bringing you guys another tutorial. Today I'm going to be showing you how to create this 3D glowing hexagon text in just Photoshop. No Cinema 4D, you could use Cinema 4D if you wanted, but this is all Photoshop and real easy guys. You can come out with this really nice looking product. I actually put this on a header, so like here's the color correction, here's some stuff I did. I'm not too sure how I feel about the whole header by itself, but I really like the text and I thought you guys would really enjoy it and be able to come up with something cool. So the first thing we want to do is create this texture. Now originally I had used this texture off the internet, which is a pretty nice one, but you can create your own, which is pretty simple, and you can kind of vary the results to your liking, and also then you're just not taking an image from the internet. So let's go ahead and create a new document, and I'll just do a 1080p. You could make it square, like 1080p by 1080p, but I'm just using the 1920 by 1080. And the first thing we want to do is go down here to the rectangle tool. Yours might be one of these other ones, but you want to go ahead to the polygon tool and make sure you put in 6 sides, and then just come down here, click, hold shift, and drag out and create a shape like so. Then you want to double click and just pick your color, and we're going to go with a dark gray, so somewhere around there works. And then let's just resize this and bring it down quite a bit. That's pretty good. So like 77 or 75 pixels wide is about where I'm at. And we're just gonna go ahead and drag that all the way to the edge. So the center is dividing it in half, or the left edge is dividing the hexagon in half. And then we're gonna Command J duplicate that, put it over onto the other side, and so now we have one on either side here, and then select both of those and hit Command J a few times, select all of the layers, go to layer, distribute, and horizontal centers. That'll equally distribute them, and you can see we obviously don't have enough, so I'm going to duplicate like 4 more. Alright, that's about the spacing we want in between. Like I said, I don't know if there's an easier way to do that. There probably is, but whatever. But we want to hit Command E on every one of those layers, and that'll just turn it into one layer, which you can name whatever you want. I'm just going to call it 1. And then let's duplicate that guy and drag it up. I'm holding Shift, and then let's move it either left or right so it kind of staggers in between the first line, and then we want to make the spacing between the first and second line about the same. So the spacing here should match the spacing here and here, and I think that's pretty close. That's pretty good. Let me zoom back out here, and then we can select both of those, merge them, duplicate them, and then just keep moving it up and following along that process. Okay, so we filled up our whole document with those and merged them all into one layer. So the next step is to double click on that layer and check texture, which will then check bevel and emboss. And you'll notice if I go to texture, I have a soft texture here selected at a 1000% scale and negative 30% depth. So if I bring this down, I wonder if you can see it a little better. Alright, well that's sort of what it looks like. You can see it's just a whatever texture. You can use any texture you want. Just bump up the scale a lot and then decrease the depth so it's slightly noticeable, but not really. I can barely see it on my monitor, and I know on the video that means you probably can't see it at all, but there's just a slight texture going on there. And I just do that to sort of break it up, and it's very subtle. but you can click OK on that. And oh, actually we need to do the bevel and emboss. You want to, these settings can vary. It doesn't matter what you do. You can actually change the angle of your lighting to whatever you'd like. I'm gonna kind of leave it in the center-ish. Actually, we'll go slightly left. Actually, I think that looks a lot better. But we're gonna do a depth of 75%, a size of 4, 0 soften, opacity 50 and 50, and you can see the angle here is 150 or 115, and the altitude is 16. So you can do those settings, or you can play around and get your own settings, but that just creates a nice bevel on there. So then we can click OK, and then you can do a couple things. You could leave it like that, or you can go ahead and add a texture. So you can create your own texture or whatever, or use a metal texture of some sort. I actually have a texture pack. You can get this texture pack in my store. I'll put a link to it in the description if you're interested, or you can just use another texture. I'm just going to use this metallic lines one because I think it looks really nice, and for something like this works really well. So let's just set that up, and we're going to put it on as a clipping mask, and I guess we could set this to overlay and just decrease the opacity a little bit. So now we have a slight metal texture going on, and I think that looks really good. So the next step is to add the glow behind. So we're gonna go to that background layer and create a new layer above it, and let's select a color. I have red selected. Go to your brush tool, get a soft brush. You can bump up the size a little bit, so I'm going around 400, and you just want to kind of create a shape in the middle here. So it doesn't have to be a perfect circle. I actually recommend that it's not, just kind of like a random shape. And then if you go to the eraser tool and just go ahead and grab a random brush. I'm going to grab one from my brush pack. Again, is in my store. I'll put a link if anyone's interested. And you can just kind of erase some bits. And actually, I'm going to go to opacity and just knock it down to about 46 and just cut out some bits like that. Just so it's not perfect, it just kind of adds a little bit of texture in there. And bring the opacity back to 100 because I always forget to change that, and then when I erase something later I get confused. And that is basically the texture. That looks pretty sweet. It's really simple, really quick to do. And then when you're done with that, you can just select everything, and you can either just Command E or duplicate and Command E, and now we have our texture. Alright, so now we're in my Twitter template. You can be in any document you want. And we're just going to go ahead and add text and then make it 3D. So grab the text tool, click down. I'm going to type Hexagon. I'm using all caps, and I'm using the font Gotham Bold. And I'm just going to bump up the size of this guy a little bit. And then once you have your text down, you can right click, warp text, and then select arc. Obviously this will be a little too much, so we're going to bump that down to like +6. And be sure your document or your text is centered. Because I believe if this is off center, the arc might mess up. I'm not sure if that's still a thing. That might even be Illustrator, but just make sure everything looks good. And then once you do that, you want to duplicate your text just in case, and then I'm going to hit Command H to hide that guide. And then we want to go to Type, Extrude to 3D. Now I also like to hide the background layer because it can be kind of annoying when dealing with these shadows. So let's actually hide that, and then let's rotate this up like that slightly. And you'll notice these shadows in the background, and you can get rid of those by getting rid of the light and stuff. So let me try to figure out where that is. Okay, you should see this box over here, and what you want to do is double click where your text name is. So it's like a group looking like this. You want to double click on that, and there is a thing here that says cast shadows. There's also catch shadows. I'm not sure what that is. I'm not seeing a difference actually, but we want to uncheck cast shadows. And then what does invisible do? Alright, that's not what we want. But then you want to just go ahead and click out of that and right click on the layer and rasterize 3D. Okay, the next thing we want to do is separate these, the front part of the text and the back part of the text. So to do that, we just can grab the magic wand tool, go over to this layer, select each part that's in the front. It should be white, and hold down shift and just click throughout. And you can just do Command C, delete, Command V. So now we have two parts of the text, and we can go ahead and add our texture. So let me recheck the black background. Go to our texture here, grab it, come over, and either I think it's Alt click. I forget what it is for Mac because I'm using a PC keyboard, but Alt click to create a clipping mask, and then Command T and scale this down holding Shift and Alt, and we're going to line this up on each letter. So I'm going to go vertical so I can actually get each letter and not overlap. So there's the H, duplicate it, Alt click, line it up over here on the E, and you can mess around where you want to put it. So maybe have the red part a little higher on the E, and just go ahead and do that throughout to each letter. Alright, and then once you do that, you just want to get rid of any overlap. So if you look down here at the A, the T texture kind of overlaps that a little bit and kind of ruins the flow of the A. So if we select that T layer, just grab the eraser, get just like a soft brush or a hard brush, get it pretty small, and just get rid of that little area. And also I got to bump over the A a tiny bit to get rid of that white. Okay, and then you can do that to the other letters that have overlap, and then go ahead and zoom out there, and that's pretty good. Now we want to go ahead to that layer, the front layer, and Command J and duplicate that. Take the bottom one that doesn't have the clipping masks on it and bring it to the top. Change the fill to 0. I hate when that happens. Double click on it, go to stroke, and I already have mine set up, but you kind of add this metallic stroke. So you set it to inside, about 4 pixels in size, fill type gradient, and you just want to stagger some colors here. So let me actually create a new one for you. So select the black or something, go to a gray. That might be a little too dark. Do a light gray, and let me bring this forward, click to get another gray, bring this forward, click to get a white, click to get another white, click to get another gray, and that turned to white for some reason. I guess it's going to keep doing that. There we go. So now we got 3 grays, 3 whites, and then you just kind of stagger them. You don't have to be perfectly evenly spaced either. You can kind of spread them out. You can add as many as you want. Just play around with it a little bit. I'm just going to go back to the original. You notice the original actually has some darker grays, and it kind of mixes up the grays. So just play around with that. It's pretty simple. And then once you get something you like, click OK and click OK. Now we want to go ahead and work with the back 3D part. So let's double click on that layer first, go to gradient overlay, and we're just going to do a simple black to white overlay. So set that to overlay, have black and white selected, or black to white selected. Well, I have white to black selected, but it's reversed, but whatever. You want the black on the bottom, white on the top, and just mess with the opacity. Maybe like the 30s work. Actually, let's go about 40. And then let's go to inner glow. And you can actually add your color here. So you could do red, do some of that. Or you can just do white, set that to overlay. Or I did black and just added some like shadows in there to kind of make it more realistic. But you can do whatever you want there. You could also do inner shadow to get that effect. It's up to you, but the inner glow settings I have 21% opacity on black, size 38. Alright, now we want to create a new layer, make it a clipping mask, go to our brush, have black selected, have a soft brush selected, decrease the size of the brush, and now we're going to add some shadows to the text. So you'll notice the shading is kind of off. The bottom of the text should all be a lot darker than the top. So you just want to go in, and anything that should be darker, you want to darken up. So this might take some time to erase bits that you kind of overlap with. You'll notice, like, if I do the E here, actually no, that's exactly what I want. But some letters you might add this and then overlap with something that doesn't need shadow, and then you can just simply erase it. Let's add that. This, I would just do the bottom. Alright, that's pretty good. And then just bring down the opacity of that. Alright, not bad. Then create a new layer again and get the color. You can either do just white lighting or the color of your glow. So again, I could use red and just add some glow to the top of things. And this is where you might have to erase some bits for overlapping. So maybe a little bit like that. Maybe a bit in the backs peeking through. Alright, you can kind of see what I did. I kind of just went softly around the edges, and then we can just decrease the opacity a little bit. Now you'll want to take your time with that and get that as even as you can around all the edges to make it look as good as possible. And to finish up the bottom part of the text, or the 3D part of the text, we want to go, and this is actually not in my texture pack, but this is just a standard metal material that you can find anywhere. This one happens to be a scratched one, and we're going to go ahead and add that to the backing. So just bring that over, make sure it fills your whole text, add a clipping mask, bring it below everything so it's actually the bottommost layer, and set it to overlay in about 70%. And boom, you kind of have some nice stuff going on there. And to finish up this 3D text, actually let me hit enter, we want to add a bit of levels so we can kind of get a bit more shading and better look here. So go down here and get levels and just bring it in until it darkens up a little, and then bring the right one in to brighten up some other spots. So that's not too bad. And let me see. Okay, never mind. And you'll notice that looks pretty good. You'll notice that the H is kind of a lot brighter than everything else. So if you have that, you can create a new layer, go to your brush tool, get the white, and just go across the top of everything but the H, set it to overlay, decrease it until it's like fairly similar, and then create a new layer that is black and go on the bottom there, set that to overlay, bring down the opacity. So now that kind of evens everything out a little bit more, maybe bump up that opacity a smidge. Alright, there's the main foundation of the text. Now we can just add some small details. So go to the very top, create a new layer, get the color we're using, in this case red, and get a soft brush and just go around and add some glow here. So I'll click there, boom. Everywhere there's red seeping through our texture. Set that to screen and bump down the opacity. Boom, there is our glow. And finally we can cap this off with a little color correction. So the first one is going to be our color, which I like to use a gradient map. So I'm going to get a gradient map, set it to hue, and let me scroll down here, and I think I used this red here in my gradient maps. If you don't have gradient maps, you don't have to use these, but if you have a bunch that you like to use, these aren't ones I created, these ones are ones you could download on the internet. This one's called Vintage 14, I'm going to use that. And then we're going to create a levels and just bring it in slightly. You can see we have a lot of darkness going on, so we don't have to bring that in too far. But then bring the light one in a pretty good ways. Usually you bring it into the end of the graph, but as you can see, it's not going to work that well. So maybe at the end of the line here will work. Then let's go to color balance. And you can mess with this, and my settings were -41. Bottom one was 12. The middle one was -19. Now you can see we get a very cold look to this, which might not work with red. That might be better for like a blue or something. But I think it looks pretty good in this case. I don't think it detracted from it at all, especially when we add some of the other stuff. So the next thing is a brightness and contrast. So a brightness of 8 and then contrast 4. Again, you can play with these settings and get different looks. And finally we want to get, actually not finally, but then we want to get another gradient map, set it to hue, and just make it a slightly different color. So I'm going to go ahead with an orange, and this orange is looking pretty drab. Alright, so I went with a pink, and then you can minimize that, have the layer mask selected, or the brush selected, have black selected, bump up the brush size, and then just kind of cut out certain bits. So now it's pink and red. Now you probably can't even tell, but if I select something else here, like okay, that kind of works. The blue, you can see how it turns into a gradient of some sort, like it's various colors, it's not just one solid color, which is a pretty good look. So this is obviously going to be a little harder to tell, but I think it looks alright, and you can tell a lot easier when you have stuff going on in the background like I had previously. And then finally we want to go ahead and add a hue and saturation, bump up the saturation to about 30, maybe somewhere in the 20s, and then you can mess with the hue and find whatever color you want. It should work for most colors. And yeah, so that's basically the tutorial, guys. Again, let's see real quick, actually I like that. Not again, I don't have anything to repeat, but if you guys want the file and actually the whole Hexagon header file, I will put a link to my Patreon in the description where you can download this. You have to be at least a $5 member. And yeah, that's basically it, guys. Hopefully I see you in the next tutorial. Follow me on Twitter at Qehzy. Subscribe for more tutorials. Follow my Instagram, which is that's Qehzy. And I'll see you next time. Peace.